Hello and welcome to Anthem Chapter 12. This is the last chapter and the last assignment for Anthem before your test, which you will take during your next class. So for this, you're going to be reading the novel to confirm previous predictions and answer discussion questions based on evidence from the text. So these may be informal things you do during class. And you're going to determine the 6 most important events in the novel that shaped the plot. And then you're going to find pictures on the internet to illustrate those ideas. So first, you're going to watch two videos about different gods and goddesses, because these are the gods/goddess that Equality and Liberty take new names. And so Equality calls himself Prometheus, and Liberty calls herself Gaea. So I want to show you these quick videos so that you have an understanding of why they chose them.
Before the creation of humanity, the Greek gods won a great battle against a race of giants called the Titans. Most Titans were destroyed or driven to the eternal hell of Tartarus. But the Titan Prometheus, whose name means foresight, persuaded his brother Epimetheus to fight with him on the side of the gods. As thanks, Zeus entrusted the brothers with the task of creating all living things. Epimetheus was to distribute the gifts of the gods among the creatures. To some he gave flight, to others the ability to move through water or race through grass. He gave the beasts glittering scales, soft fur, and sharp claws. Meanwhile, Prometheus shaped the first humans out of mud. He formed them in the image of the gods, but Zeus decreed they were to remain mortal and worship the inhabitants of Mount Olympus from below. Zeus deemed humans subservient creatures, vulnerable to the elements and dependent on the gods for protection. However, Prometheus envisioned his crude creations with a greater purpose. So when Zeus asked him to decide how sacrifices would be made, the wily Prometheus planned a trick that would give humans some advantage. He killed a bull and divided it into 2 parts to present to Zeus. On one side, he concealed the succulent flesh and skin under the unappealing belly of the animal. On the other, he hid the bones under a thick layer of fat. When Zeus chose the seemingly best portion for himself, he was outraged at Prometheus's deception. Fuming, Zeus forbade the use of fire on Earth, whether to cook meat or for any other purpose. But Prometheus refused to see his creations denied this resource, and so he scaled Mount Olympus to steal fire from the workshop of Hephaestus and Athena. He hid the flames in a hollow fennel stalk and brought it safely down to the people. This gave them the power to harness nature for their own benefit and ultimately dominate the natural order. With fire, humans could care for themselves with food and warmth, but they could also forge weapons and wage war. Prometheus's flames acted as a catalyst for the rapid progression of civilization. When Zeus looked down at this scene, he realized what had happened. Prometheus had once again wounded his pride and subverted his authority. Furious, Zeus imposed a brutal punishment. Prometheus was to be chained to a cliff for eternity. Each day, he would be visited by a vulture who would tear out his liver, and each night his liver would grow back to be attacked again in the morning. Although Prometheus remained in perpetual agony, he never expressed regret at his act of rebellion. His resilience in the face of oppression made him a beloved figure in mythology. He was also celebrated for his mischievous and inquisitive spirit, and for the knowledge, progress, and power he brought to human hands. He's also a recurring figure in art and literature. In Percy Bysshe Shelley's lyrical drama Prometheus Unbound, the author imagines Prometheus as a romantic hero who escapes and continues to spread empathy and knowledge. Of his protagonist, Shelley wrote, "Prometheus is the type of the highest perfection of moral and intellectual nature. Impelled by the purest and the truest motives, to the best and noblest ends. His wife Mary envisaged Prometheus as a more cautionary figure and subtitled her novel Frankenstein, The Modern Prometheus. This suggests the damage of corrupting the natural order and remains relevant to the ethical questions surrounding science and technology today. As hero, rebel, or trickster, Prometheus remains a symbol of our capacity to capture the powers of nature. And ultimately, he reminds us of the potential of individual acts to ignite the world. TED-Ed is a nonprofit. If you value our work, please consider supporting it on patreon.com/TEDEd.
So that explains the legend of Prometheus, and when we get to the story, we will talk about how this relates a little bit more to equality. And now that we've seen Prometheus and his origin, then we will now look at Gaia, and you can spell it either of two ways. The first way is the way they spell it in Anthem. This is the way you typically see it spelled most of the time, but this is the name that Liberty adopts. So let's look at this video as well.
Gaia is a primordial goddess of Greek mythology and is also known as Mother Earth. The divinity is the daughter of chaos, and her main trait is her fertility, and so she gave birth to Uranus, the sky, Pontus, the sea, and Aurea, who would be the mountains. Uranus began to reign over the earth and started to rule Gaia. With her, he had countless children, among them Titans, Cyclopses, and Hecatoncheires. But, fearing that his children would usurp his power, Uranus trapped them in Gaia's womb. This caused her pain and suffering. Mother Earth plotted a conspiracy with her son, the Titan Cronus, who then castrated his father and dethroned him. In due course, Gaia would also conspire against Zeus, and instigating a clash between gods and giants, which later became known as the Gigantomachy. However, Zeus and the gods of Olympus prevailed. Gaia finally surrendered herself to the brand new cosmic order established by the Olympians, and the goddess then started to be worshipped as the personification of the earth. Gaia enjoyed great prestige among ancient Greeks, given that Gaia represents the foundation where all the rest is structured upon. Her worship precedes the emergence of the gods of Olympus, since its roots can be founded in rather old Indo-European roots. In these cults, the matriarchal power was predominant, and thus the mother goddess and creator was the most worshipped of all. The frequent fights between Gaia and their descendants, Uranus, Cronus, and Zeus, symbolically illustrate the transition, despite all the resistance, of a cult with matriarchal roots to the establishment of a patriarchal predominance. In Rome mythology, Gaia does not have an equivalent name like the other gods. She was solely named Terra, Earth, or Mother Earth, and given our Roman heritage, up to this day, we still call the world we live in the planet Earth.
So that gives us a little bit of insight as well, and once we get to the novel, we will discuss both of these and how they represent these two characters. Oops. So now, while you are reading today, I want you to think, what were some of those predictions that came up while you were thinking over the last couple of chapters after equality left society. And now that we get to the end of this, we will look at those predictions again and see, were you correct? Were you partially correct? If not, where did you go wrong? All right. Okay. And after that, we are going to look at the summary through pictures. So let's look at this assignment right now so that we can figure out how to do this after you are done reading. So for this assignment, you will look up pictures that you feel best summarize the story. You will have 6 boxes for the 6 most important scenes in the story. So I've already done one for you. It is the very beginning. So figure out, after this, your 5 most important events that you want to include. And it would probably make sense to type those into your explanation boxes, or at least just type in what scene you want to use in the 5 different explanation boxes on the right-hand side. All right? And then once you have the scenes that you want, then go to the internet and start finding pictures that you feel represent them. Now, you don't have to make these science fiction type pictures. They can be from real world examples. So what I did, I found one of a prison. So this is razor wire from the top of a prison with a surveillance camera, because in equality society, it's very restrictive. You feel like there's no rights, that you're constantly being watched, that nobody, can do anything on their own, because it's all for the betterment of the community. All right, so that's kind of where I went with that. But if you decide that, that's not the route you want to go, feel free to take the picture out and put in something else and use the explanation. I'm fine with that. Once you're done putting in your pictures, make sure that you fully explain, how does this picture represent that part of the story? All right, and when you're completely happy with it and you have a finished product, then you're going to submit it. But please don't submit it without these explanations. I need to know, why does this picture explain this scene? That's all you have to do. Just a short, quick little explanation. You don't need evidence from the text. You just need to explain your reasoning, and that's it. All right, and to do this, all you do is go to Google Images, you type in, the type of thing you're looking for, you copy, you right-click on it, or you hold on it and you copy the picture, and then you paste it into the box. And there will be 5 other boxes below this one on your page. All right. So now that you're at the end of this novel, what are your final thoughts of this novel? I want you to really sit back and think about it. How did you feel about it? Discuss with other students, what were the things that you liked, or what were the things that were challenging. When you come back to class next time, if you're a remote student, we will definitely talk about this. Would you read another book like this if you had the choice? Did you like this dystopian science fiction type of thing? If you did, and you have not read The Giver yet by Lois Lowry, The Giver is a fantastic novel, and there's actually 4 novels in the series. They're not all called The Giver, so you'd have to look it up online. But it's, I believe, The Giver, The Messenger, Gathering Blue, and Sun, S-O-N. They are all fabulous. Lois Lowry is a wonderful writer. And it is a very similar type of society, but the writing is a little more, kid and teen friendly. It's not as adult as Anthem is going to be. But if you liked the concept, you will definitely love The Giver as well. Just a quick reminder that the next class that you have, you're going to have your multiple choice test for this. That is going to be 5 reading passages, 3 of which are from the novel. 1 is about Ayn Rand, which you've already had one of those, and 1 is about the legend of Prometheus. So you've already had all of this information pretty much introduced to you. So the reading shouldn't take long. There's 20 multiple choice questions, maybe 3 or 4 about each reading. And then you're good to go, and we will be done with Anthem, and we will move on to Call of the Wild. Continue this video on for the reading portion of Chapter 12. So now we're going to read the last chapter together and discuss some of these ideas of Prometheus and Gaia as they were explained to you in your video. Chapter 12. It was when I read the first of the books I found in my house that I saw the word I. And when I understood this word, the book fell from my hands and I wept. I, who had never known tears, I wept in deliverance and in pity for all mankind. I understood the blessed thing which I had called my curse. I understood why the best in me had been my sins and my transgressions, and why I had never felt guilt in my sins. I understood that centuries of chains and lashes would not kill the spirit of man nor the sense of truth within him. I read books for many days. Then I called the Golden One, and I told her what I had read and what I had learned. And she looked at me, and the first words she spoke were, "I love you." So this was that phrase in chapter 9 that she was struggling to find. She said, "We love you, we alone, we as one, love you alone, love you as one." But the only word she needed was I. So she's finally found it. Now she can be complete and complete this phrase that she wants to say to him. Then I said, "My dearest one, it is not proper for men to be without names. There was a time when each man had a name of his own, to distinguish him from all other men. So let us choose our names. I have read of a man who lived many thousands of years ago, and of all the names in these books, his is the one I wish to bear. He took the light of the gods, and he brought it to men, and he taught men to be gods. And he suffered for his deed, as all bearers of light must suffer. His name was Prometheus. All right, so this idea that name equals identity, this idea was brought up in Mango Street as well. So, how does this relate to the information from the video? If you remember, Prometheus brought that light, and because of his things that he was trying to do with his life, he was punished for it by being changed to a rock. So just as equality is trying to bring the light or the knowledge to other people, he gets punished for it. All right? And in the end, he still goes out on his own, but he still has that light. He still has that knowledge, and you'll see in the future he wishes to share that with other people that he feels are deserving of that knowledge or of that light. It shall be your name, said the Golden One. And I have read of a goddess, I said, who was the mother of the earth and of all the gods. Her name was Gaia. Let this be your name, my Golden One, for you are to be the mother of a new kind of gods. It shall be my name, said the Golden One. All right, so again, Gaia is, the mother, the creator of the other gods, and all of the gods in Mount Olympus originally sprang from her. So she is the only woman in this civilization. She is the only one who can bring forth life, who can have children and kind of repopulate, if you will. So both of these names are creators of sorts. They are nurturing. They are parental types of figures. So they will go on to nurture new groups of people, whether it's just their children or whether others join them. Now I look ahead. My future is clear before me. The saint of the pyre had seen the future when he chose me as his heir, as the heir of all saints and all the martyrs who came before him and who died for the same cause, for the same word, no matter what name they gave to their cause and their truth. I shall live here in my own house. I shall take my foot from the earth by the toil of my own hands, or food from the earth, by the toil of my own hands. I shall learn many secrets from my books through the years ahead. I shall rebuild the achievements of the past and open the way to carry them further, the achievements which are open to me but closed forever to my brothers, for their minds are shackled to the weakest and dullest ones among them. I have learned that my power of the sky was known to men long ago. They call it electricity. It was the power that moved their greatest inventions. It lit this house with light which came from those globes of glass on the walls. I have found the engine which produced this light. I shall learn how to repair it and how to make it work again. I shall learn how to use the wires which carry this power. Then I shall build a barrier of wires around my home and across the paths which lead to my home, a barrier of light as a cobweb more impassable than a wall of granite, a barrier my brothers will never be able to cross, for they have nothing to fight me with, save the brute force of their numbers. I have my mind. All right, so he completely rejects his society and working with his society. And he doesn't want anybody in his society restricting him. So here at the end, he wishes to create a barrier to shut everyone else out. Oops. So he can't be bothered by them. He can't be restricted by them. All right. So he's learning that selfishness that he needs to be able to get by in the world that he thinks is better than the communal one. Then here on this mountain top, with the world below me and nothing above me but the sun, I shall live my own truth. Gaia is pregnant with my child. Our son will be raised as a man. He will be taught to say I and to bear the pride of it. He will be taught to walk straight on his own feet. He will be taught reverence for his own spirit. Then I shall read all the books and learn my new way. When my home will be ready and my earth tilled, I shall steal one day for the last time into the cursed city of my birth. I shall call to my friend, who has no name save International, and all those like him, Fraternity, who cries without reason, Solidarity, who calls for help in the night, and a few others. I shall call to me all the men and women whose spirit has not been killed within them and who suffer under the yoke of their brothers. They will follow me, and I shall lead them to my fortress. And here, in this uncharted wilderness, I and they, my chosen friends, my fellow builders, shall write the first chapter in the new history of man. So he plans to go back and free the others from society. So here is that place where some of you might have made that prediction, where he will create a new community, or he will go back and rescue people. So he hasn't done it yet, but he plans to do it in the future. However, he's not bringing everyone. He's only bringing a select few people that their will and their spirit has not been crushed by his society. So some of those friends and those people that he knows need it the most, and the ones he deems worthy to be friends and people he can call into his society. These are the things before me, and as I stand here at the door of glory, I look behind me for the last time. I look upon the history of men, which I have learned from the books, and I wonder. It was a long story, and the spirit which moved it was the spirit of man's freedom. But what is freedom? Freedom from what? There is nothing to take a man's freedom away from him save other men. To be free, a man must be free of his brothers. That is freedom. That and nothing else. Think of all the instances in the history where people have taken away the freedom of other people, because that's basically what he's saying, is the only thing that can take away your freedom is other people. So think of things like slavery, the Holocaust. The reason our country was founded was because England was trying to take away religious freedom. So the Pilgrims came here, and the Founding Fathers came here, and they built this country, on freedom and democracy. Whether it has turned out exactly the way they meant it to, that's another story. But, all of those things where men have taken freedom away from other men, or people have taken freedom away from other people, these are the things in society that we need to look at. At first, man was enslaved by the gods, but he broke their chains. Then he was enslaved by the kings, but he broke their chains. He was enslaved by his birth, by his kin, by his race, but he broke their chains. He declared to all of his brothers that a man has rights which neither God nor king nor other men can take away from him, no matter what their number, for his is the right of man, and there is no right on earth above this right. He stood on the threshold of freedom, for which the blood of the centuries behind him had been spilled. But then he gave up all he had won and fell lower than his savage being. What brought it to pass? What disaster took their reason away from men? What whip lashed them to their knees in shame and submission? The worship of the word we. All right, so you have to think, what made the people bring the society worship of we into society? We will never know, because they do not speak of the great rebirth with any detail. It's a big secret, probably because in this book the government is the one who is making the truth, and the truth is not really truth. When men accepted that worship, the structure of centuries collapsed about them, the structure whose every beam had come from the thought of some one man, each in his day down the ages, from the depth of some one spirit, such spirit as existed but for its own sake. Those men who survived, those eager to obey, eager to live for one another, since they had nothing else to vindicate them, those men could neither carry on nor preserve what they had received. Thus did all thought, all science, all wisdom perish on earth. Thus did all men with nothing to offer save their great number, lost the steel towers, the flying ships, the power of wires, all the things they had not created and could never keep. Perhaps later some men had been born with the mind and the courage to recover these things which were lost. Perhaps these men came before the councils of scholars. they were answered as I have been answered, and for the same reason. So he kind of implies that civilization as we know it now fell apart because many people had nothing to offer to society, and they were just, good at following orders. So a few powerful people took over, and when the people with abilities like equality came along, they were silenced. They were made to be street sweepers. They were punished. They were driven out of society. So that's kind of, where he's going with that idea. But I still wonder how it was possible in those graceless years of transition long ago that men did not see whither they were going and went on in blindness and cowardice to their fate. I wonder, for it is hard for me to conceive how men who knew the word I could give it up and not know what they lost. But such has been the story, for I have lived in the city of the damned, and I know what horror men permitted to be brought upon them. Perhaps in those days there were a few among men, a few of clear sight and clean soul, who refused to surrender that word. What agony must have been theirs before that which they saw coming and could not stop. Perhaps they cried out in protest and in warning, but men paid no heed to their warning, and they, these few, fought a hopeless battle, and they perished with their banners smeared by their own blood, and they chose to perish, for they knew. To them I send my salute across the centuries and my pity. So he doesn't understand how people could let this takeover happen to them, to their society. How could they let people take over this society and take away their freedoms? Why did only some fight for their rights and not all? And these are the things that we can say about history. How did something like the Holocaust happen? How did people let this happen? Why was Hitler allowed to take over, and no one fought against him until a war had to happen for that to stop? And that's kind of the idea of history. How do these things happen? How do good people let bad things happen? And that question may never be answered. It's a deep psychological question, and we may never know the answers to that. Theirs is the banner in my hand, and I wish I had the power to tell them that the despair of their hearts was not to be final, and their night was not without hope. For the battle they lost can never be lost, for that which they died to save can never perish. Through all the darkness, through all the shame of which men are capable, the spirit of man will remain alive in this earth. It may sleep, but it will awaken. It may wear chains, but it will break through, and man will go on, man, not men. Here on this mountain, I and my sons and my chosen friends shall build our new land and our fort, and it will become as the heart of the earth, lost and hidden at first, but beating louder each day, and word of it will reach every corner of the earth, and the roads of the world will become as veins which will carry the best of the world's blood to my threshold. And all my brothers and the councils of my brothers will hear of it, and they will be impotent against me. And the day will come when I shall break all of the chains of the earth and raise the cities of the enslaved, and my home will become the capital of a world where each man will be free to exist for his own sake. For the coming of that day shall I fight, and I and my sons and my chosen friends, for the freedom of man, for his rights, for his life, for his honor. And here over the portals of my fort I shall cut in the stone the word which is to be my beacon and my banner, the word which will not die, should we all perish in battle, the word which can never die on this earth, for it is the heart of it and the meaning and the glory, the sacred word, ego. So ego here means self, sense of self, self-esteem. All right, it is that alone, that great I. And basically this is the word that he's going to put above, his home, so that the beacon, meaning, and his banner, meaning the thing that calls people to him. All right, so he wants to become a great leader, like, the Council of Scholars, but he wants each person to be able to have their freedom. He wants to lead this society, but also a society in which all men are equal and all men have rights, and they're equal by being individuals. Okay? So this is not the unspeakable word. The unspeakable word most likely was I, but he has now created a new sacred word, okay, out of this idea. So now that you have finished this, you're going to work on your summary through pictures. Remember, your last one can be all the stuff in the end of the novel that just happened, but you should stretch out your examples across the entire novel.